Do you ever feel like life has got you snared and snagged up on the side of the river of your life and you don't know how to get out there in the flow again? Well, today's guest, Myrna Young, has a rags to riches story about how she has built her life according to her intention by transforming her mind, and you can do the same thing. Join us to find out more.
Soul Nectar Show, the Soul Nectar Show. You're invited, delighted to discover who you are. Anything is possible if you believe. So join us on this beautiful journey. Soul Nectar Show, Soul Nectar Show.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Soul Nectar Show, that show where we talk about all things essence, where we gather around the campfire and we share our stories of connection to that which is bigger than us, the big mystery beyond the veil, our path to becoming more conscious, more relatable, really just better humans on the planet and starting to take care of our planet the way she deserves us to. And I'm your host, Carrie Hummingbird. I have a passion for helping people step into becoming earth keepers, to really being the stewards of this beautiful planet the way we promised we would, and to awaken ourselves in whatever way works. And I bring guests on every single week to help you in that process, to hear different stories and this awakening process through different people's lenses and their own experiences, in the hopes that you'll get some gold nuggets that you can bring home to yourself and bring into your life and take some more steps forward on your own epic journey of awakening. And today is no different. Today we invite to the show Myrna Young. Welcome, Myrna.
Thank you, Carrie, for having me on the show. I will enjoy your conversation as awakened beings.
That's right. I'm looking forward to sharing what Myrna has to offer. It's a little different slant than we normally follow on the show. And I think it's going to be really amazing to hear her story and what was behind the book that she put out, the best-selling book, Out of the Snares, which is a story of hope and encouragement. Some of you may be tuning into my interviews on other shows, and Myrna also has a show called Transform Your Mind. And I was on that show. So I'll put a link in the show notes so you can go check out our discussion over there. So I'm really interested to hear your story, Myrna, of Out of the Snares, and what prompted you to write this story, and what are you sharing about your life that's so inspirational?
Yes, great question. Well, Out of the Snares, a story of hope and encouragement, is actually almost like a memoir for me. It is a book, and I got the title while I was in church, with a song. The snares means something that's holding you, and you're escaping the snares. I was born in a very poor country in Guyana. My mom and my dad, I was not married. We had some generational issues where, the women were not getting married. My mom and my grandmother were both domestic servants. And it was in that poverty type of environment. Now, what helped us escape the poverty is an aunt of mine, moved from Guyana to Toronto, Canada, when they were looking for domestic servants. Again, she was another domestic servant. They were looking for domestic servants. So she went over to Canada, and this was way back in the 70s when it was easy to migrate. So then she sponsored my mom, who went over to Canada again as a domestic servant. And then later on, my mom sponsored her three children, which I was the eldest. And so I went into Canada, and I wasn't awakened or in this self-improvement space or anything like that, but I believe that I was born with a purpose. So in Canada, I had a lot of things opened up for me. When I got there, I was cleaning houses too with my mom. And then I said, you know what, that is not my path because I was, I already had a pretty good education. In Guyana, we have something like GCO levels, which is from England. And I had the top number, which was 6 GCO levels. So I was educated. And I said to myself, I'm not going to be, domestic servant. So I went out looking for work. I ended up working in a factory. And I met this girl in the factory, and she said, let's go look for work. We went out. I got hired at the bank with no experience, with nothing, and she did not get hired. So there's instances like this that, was always directing me on my path. And then I met this older man who became my husband later on, that told me of a program that the government was giving, where they'd send you to school. So I went back to school. The government paid for it. Then I went into a really good career as a salesperson. And then when I was a salesperson, one day, Tony Robbins came into town. This is back in the 90s now. And he came into town and he was starting off, his life coaching business. So he was giving away free tickets. So we got invited as a sales community or sales office to go to a seminar. And of course, the seminar was on the power within, right? And that was my first introduction to self-improvement, that we have, the power within us to do whatever we want to do. 2 months later, I started my own limousine service and I became a very successful entrepreneur in Canada, getting the Entrepreneur of the Year in 1998. And then, again, like I said, I'm taking you through my growth path. So, and then, as a limousine operator, I would go to Vegas every year and I would see these Americans coming and buying 14 limousines at once. And I'm thinking, wow, this is definitely the promised land that God is talking about. So, I started my journey into bringing my business to Miami, because that's where I thought that all the limousine operators were. And then I get to Miami and God, put a break on it. I came through my journey and now God showed me what he wanted me to do. And one day I was reading the newspaper, which I rarely ever do, or I never do, as a matter of fact. But this paper came in front of me and I picked it up and started flipping through it. I wasn't even reading it. I was just flipping through it. And a picture caught my eyes, and the picture said life coach. And there was a girl that was from my church in that picture. And I've never heard that word before, but it was powerful. Life coach. And I'm thinking that everything that I've gone through and the direction that the God is taking me in, maybe I could be a life coach. Right. So anyway, so that's basically where this all started. I was reading a book at the time. The guy said, if there's somebody that you like and you admire, take them to lunch, pick their brain. I took her to lunch, picked her brain. I asked her what this life coaching is all about. What do you do? How you find clients? She told me. I went and got licensed or certified, I should say, with the University of Miami. Ended up doing an interview on a show, just like I'm doing an interview on your show. And the company offered me my own show. and that's basically was my path. I started the podcast or the radio show, and I converted it into a podcast. Now we're on YouTube, and now I also have a TV show, just by accident again, all part of my growth. One day somebody sent me something and says, preach the word. Worldwide Television is looking for life coaches. And I says, well, I'm a life coach. I think they said life coach and host. I said, I'm a life coach. I'm a host. I applied and got a grant. So now my show is on the Preach the Word Network, Worldwide Television. And again, that's God taking me on a journey. The journey is not finished, but it was a path of incremental growth, incremental inspiration. I know we're going to touch here on the soul, but yeah, your soul came here for a purpose. And, it is going to take you to your purpose by putting people in front of you that is supposed to take you to the next level. So that's my story.
Powerful story. And I love that you met Tony Robbins. He's also part of my story in a way, in that he teaches firewalking, or he does a lot of firewalking with his groups, right? And and I've studied with one of his mentors, so I've been able to study and learn firewalking, and I lead my own groups on firewalking as well. And it's just it's a nice introduction for me. I do it a little different, but it's a nice introduction to getting outside your mind and getting outside what you think is going to happen, and your fears and opening up that maybe something will happen that you didn't expect that might be even better than what you thought. And I know that you must lead people through this this pathway of seeing what's going on inside their minds and then really shifting that and deciding what story they want to tell and how they want to handle all the stuff that's being stirred up in their minds. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, for sure. So, one of the messages that I want, or the intention of the Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life podcast or radio show, is because I know where I came from. And I know that not only in the third world countries, but even right here in the United States, a lot of the African American community live in lack, live in poverty. And they believe that that is where they're supposed to be because their mother them did it and their grandmother them did it, just like me. Everybody is coming through those lenses and they believe that this is basically where they're supposed to end up. Now, expanding the mind is by saying that you have the power to decide. One of the first books that I read was The Power of Intention with Dr. Dwayne Dwyer. And it's powerful. And I've actually circled back to intention now because I just finished reading the book, The Seat of the Soul. And one of the big chapters in there is on intention and how intention is so powerful. And intention is you're creating physically as well as you're creating mentally because your thoughts or your intention, empower you. So one of the first things I recognized when I was in that space, and it's really interesting that you talked about awakening. But my very first book was called Becoming Conscious, My Awakening, because I became awakened, listening to Deepak Chopra and Dr. Dwayne Dwyer and, all those luminaries that talked about, the soul and intention and synchrodestiny and all these different things. And so I recognize that the mind is where everything is. Tony Robbins is going to be, I'm in Florida. He's back now. And he's got a show in, I think, October or so in West Palm Beach. And he's been doing some heavy promoting on it. And I was looking at that firewalking thing because I've never, other than that first time that I went to his conference, I've never been, well, actually, I did see him again, but I never went to where he was offering the firewalking. And I was looking at people walking in that fire and I was thinking to myself, do they really get burnt? Or is their mind stopping them from being burnt? I don't even know how that works. But I know that fear is false evidence appearing real. So if you fear failure, if you fear, taking risk or taking chances or things like that, then you're not going to go anywhere because you're stunted by fear. So you have to open the mind. You have to actually face the fear. And it's really interesting. One of my shows that I like, and it's an old show. It's on Netflix, and it's Jane the Virgin. And just last night they were talking, and the husband was fired from his job, and he was trying to become a lawyer, and he's failing all the tests to be a lawyer, and he's operating in fear. And Jane said, "Well, let's look at it. Let's assume the worst, right? So what happens if you don't become a lawyer? What happens if you never get a job? We'll be homeless." You know what I mean? He says, well, we'll never really be homeless because we've got family to go to and we could move back into our mother's house or whatever. And that is basically what you have to do. You have to figure out the worst case scenario and face it. And that's how you expand the mind.
I love that you just said that because very recently I've been getting more brave, courageous myself in putting out messages that Mother Earth is calling me to put out. And those aren't messages that people want to talk about. Like, we're in an extinction event, potentially, if we don't change radically how we operate on this planet. We need to take care of the animals, the plants, the environment. And because we haven't been doing that, we're starting to see a lot of shifts and changes in our ecosystem that's causing species to go extinct in rapid form. Just reading this book called The Sixth Extinction, actually, from a scientific perspective, and it's talking about these golden toads in Costa Rica that just all of a sudden started dying out of nowhere, just like bam, whole populations of amphibians dying. And it's not just happening there, it's happening all over the world. So we have to start waking up and paying attention to this. And I actually had a light worker leave my list because she said, oh, doomsday scenarios, I'm out of here. So you're not able to go to the depths of the shadow to face the worst possible potential and to let it armor you, to let it motivate you, to let it inspire you every single moment of your day, that when you take actions, you know death is at your door. I mean, I really feel like death is a powerful ally. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm not saying we're going to have that happen. I'm saying that it's a potential. And if I embrace that potential, it's going to change how I show up every single day.
Yeah. So are you saying that, when you face that fear of death, then you show up differently? Is that what you're saying?
Well, just notice how people's lives change when they face some traumatic event that they thought they were going to die.
It's true.
And people that outlive suicide attempts, their whole world opens up at some point. Like usually right after the last attempt and they realize that they're not going to get off this planet. Because God's like, nope, nope, nice try, nope.
Yep.
It's like you finally have, the buck stops here. It's like you have to go, all right, I'm here. I can't get out. What am I going to do? It's inevitable. So how am I going to show up with that? And how am I going to let that be my inspiration to guide me forward to the next step?
Yeah, that's true. So one of the other things that I do is that you just said, that it's never going to kill you, right? So if you're sitting here being afraid that you're going to become homeless or you're not going to have a job or you can't quit one job until you have another one and you're going to be going to work every day, hating it because you are afraid to take the next step, then you just say to yourself, it is not going to kill you. There's even a saying from my country that says, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? So, you just have to face the fear and recognize that, one of the great things that Tony talks about is that people don't change until the fear or the pain of staying is more than, the joy of going or something like that. Like people are more, I think he says that people are more motivated by fear or pain than they are of pleasure. So, if you stick where you are right now and you feel that pain, right? Find something in your mind, open up your mind to the pleasure of going. Like when Jane or her husband was doing that exercise about, let's imagine the worst case scenario. On the flip side of that, it should be, what is the best case scenario? What is the joy and the pleasure if you face this fear and continue going? And I bet you on the other end of that would be, he would become a lawyer. They would have a big old house. They have a whole bunch of kids. They're going to travel on vacations and they're going to do all the great things because he went through that fear part and got to the good stuff.
Yeah. And the good stuff's on the other side of the fear. Yes. I also think we're facing this with this whole pandemic that we're in right now because, a lot of people's health conditions don't support them in moving through an event like this. Their bodies just are not equipped to have the health and vitality necessary to naturally battle off something like COVID, any kind of significant attack on the immune system. And so why are their immune systems weakened? For like so many factors of things that didn't get dealt with and addressed, because it's like, I don't want to look at that. I don't want to look at how Diet Coke and Coca-Cola is not good for me. I don't want to look at how eating McDonald's every day is not good for me. I don't want to look at how chocolate cake is not good for me. It's like, I don't want to look at that. I want to just keep having my indulgences and just like cope and then find some quick solution to keep going. Our whole medical system is based on that model.
Well, the great thing about expanding the mind, and one of the first things that I learned from Deepak Chopra was meditation. And I've expanded that because now when I started listening to Deepak on meditation, when it was like, 20 years, maybe 15 years ago or so. But now meditation is now, you would call it like a buzzword. Everybody's talking about it. Everybody's teaching it. Everybody's talking about it. But, meditation and going inside your body is just so powerful, because I will tell you, I can heal myself. I can strengthen my immune system. I do meditations to strengthen my immune systems, to open my chakra systems. You know what I mean? And yeah, I mean, I've been in contact with about 2 or 3 people that got COVID, and I never got it because, yeah, part of expanding your mind is that your body is in homeostasis and it knows how to heal itself, right? And I actually understood that way, way back when I read Christopher Reeve's biography. And, he was Superman and he got hurt and he was a paraplegic and all he could do is blow into a straw. And by the time he died, he had returned, movement to his body. I think he was even on his way to walking again. And you know how he did that? He did that by sitting outside his house on his porch every single day and visualizing his insides. And he was able to repair it. So I know it can be done. I know it can be done. And when you meditate and when you put your mind on wherever the pain is or whatever, you can heal yourself. There's, and I'm no great healer or whatever. I'm not saying I can touch somebody and heal them. I probably can, but I'm concentrating on me and the mind and basically what you can do. So yeah, a lot of people don't want to do the work. And that's another book that I read that was really, really good by Byron Katie. She's got this book called The Work, and it's really about depression. She cured herself of depression. I mean, debilitating, I can't even say that word, horrible depression, where she was confined into a halfway house because she couldn't do anything other than lie on the floor, right? Because guess what? Her mind was telling her all these things and was throwing things at her, right? And one day, just like that, she decided, she's not going to listen to her mind, right? She's not going to listen to this negative talk or whatever the thing is doing to her. And then she changed. And then she wrote this book that's called The Work. And the work is that every time you have a thought, you question it. Is it true? Is it true? Right? How do I know it's true? And things like that. You know what I mean? So the people that want to drink Coca-Cola and drink the sugar, even though they're obese, right? And the doctor is saying, hey, you got to lose weight, else you're going to die, right? And they just can't bring themselves to stop, is because they're not willing to do the work. It takes work and it's painful, like Tony says, right? People don't want to be in pain.
It's ironic because there's way more pain in walking that path of ignoring everything your body is telling you and everything Mother Earth is telling you and everything God is telling you, and just keep going down that narrower and narrower and narrower path where there's just like more thorns, more brambles, more stumbling blocks, and then more 2x4s, but that's
it's
kind of
knocking you over the head. I like that one.
knocking you over the head. Like, dude, wake up.
Right,
and all your ancestors are like yelling at you by now and like tapping you and poking you and prodding you and provoking you and just doing anything to get you to listen so that you'll pay attention and start taking and do the things that are better for you, which take initial effort. You do have to climb out of the ditch that you dug. And you can do it, right? I mean, you and I are living proof of that. Dr. Joe Dispenza is another one who rebuilt his whole body with his mind, right? Yeah. So you can do it. It's totally possible. Yes. So many people are here, like beautiful light workers, souls who went through really tough times. Byron Katie, like all the people you've been mentioning, Tony Robbins, all these people and all these people I interview on this show are here to just demonstrate the power of transformation, and that when you finally have enough of yourself, you can change. That's why I love Dr. Joe Dispenza. He was one of my first 2x4s in my, of like the, the power to not be yourself anymore. I was like, oh shoot, I need to stop being who I'm being. Okay, I get it.
Yeah.
I need to be the higher version of me, not my personality, not my mind, that my naysayer mind, my programmed brain that has naysaying thoughts. No, like be the me that's inside, buried underneath all that mud. And I'm looking at people, I don't know if you notice this as well, Myrna, but when I see people that are in a lot of pain on that road of the tightening road that's like getting brambly and thorny and it's tougher and tougher and tougher and tougher and they still won't take the action, it's like there's this dullness to their eyes. It's like they're filled up with mud on the inside and they're just like they're just so stuck. They can't even be grateful for anything.
Yeah, that's true. I just had a doctor on my show a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about looking into getting up every morning and looking into your eyes for 10 minutes, because that's the windows to your soul. Right. And I told him that, someone had told me to go, I think it was the girl that wrote the 5-minute rule. I don't remember her name right now, but she was saying to get up in the morning and look yourself in the eye in the mirror and do your affirmations, that I am going to do this. I am beautiful or whatever. So I would do it for like a minute, or not even a minute, a couple of seconds. And he's saying, do it for 10 minutes. Look into the eyes of your soul, and you will see that you're opening up and whatever. So yeah, I mean, if you can't see into the eyes of your soul, if it's all covered over with mud, you'll be able to understand that there's no light in you, and
it's all in there, it's covered up.
Right. Yeah. The seat of the soul makes a big difference, a big talk about light as the capital L, you know what I mean? And you've been talking about that a lot in our conversation so far. But yeah, light is a capital L and love is a capital L. And but as a coach, I know that it all starts with you loving yourself. If you're not going to be able to, if you're not willing to make the change for you, then you can't change for anyone else. You've got to want to live. You got to want to live healthy. You know what I mean? One of my greatest intentions is that I live to be a nice old age, and that I don't live in a hospital or in a bed. You know what I mean? I've seen a lot of my family members get a stroke, and then they live in a bed for 10 years where somebody is feeding them with a tube and they're changing their diaper and doing all that. I would need someone to kill me.
Myrna,
that is not how I want to live. Right.
I just went to, we just got back from Peru earlier this year, and we went on a pilgrimage to their holy mountain, which is called El Sangate. It's this beautiful mountain up in the Sacred Valley. And they have keepers of the mountain. So in their culture, there's keepers of the mountain. There's visionaries and shamans, you could say. I guess they don't use that word, but something like that. And they are there to listen to the messages of the mountain and share it with everybody else, because they're listening. They're actually clear and listening. And so they share the message of the mountain. This, we were walking up there, and of course it's like 15,000 feet high. So we're really struggling because our lungs, Western 2,000 feet Texas lungs are having trouble walking at that altitude. But we're almost there. And off to the side is sitting on the ground with this beautiful tapestry and lots of things for sale that she handmade, is this elderly woman who's sitting there. And our guide says, oh, she's the Alta Masayuk of this mountain. She's 120 years old.
You are kidding me. And she climbed the mountain?
She's up. She walks all around those hills all day long. She lives up there. So he offered her prayers in the customary way as a mapacho, which is it looks like a cigarette, but it's sacred tobacco. It's not all chemicalized like the things here. And he blows prayers into the tobacco, and then he lights it and offers it, and then he gives it to her, and she says in Quechua, which is their language, I love mapacho. And she starts blowing prayers all over the place. 120 years. So all these people I see in the West, I'm like, yeah, you think that the tobacco is killing you? You think that the diet is killing you? No, it's your lack of love that's killing you. It's you lost your spark.
It's true. It's true.
And if you have your spark, like this lady, you can live to 120, smoke all the mapachos you want.
Yes. That is profound. It's very true. Right. Yeah. Which is why the seat of the soul makes such a big deal about love and light, because they go together. And yes, the light of your soul. And, Jesus started talking about love is the most important commandment. Love your neighbor as yourself, love God, love yourself, love your enemies. I mean, nobody can understand what nonsense he was talking. You love your enemies, but it's true. When you love your enemies, it does something to you. It does something to your body and your spirit and your soul and all these different things. So yeah, it first starts with self-love. And a lot of people don't have self-love, or they don't even think about themselves because they're not conscious beings. They're just reacting to whatever is going on in the world and whatever is the next thing that comes to them. And, they're not, they're just reacting. They're not, they're not putting any consciousness into their lives. And so we're talking about consciousness, we're talking about mindsets, we're talking about belief systems, we're talking about a whole bunch of things all wrapped up in one.
Yeah, exactly. And, I want to say, like, for anybody listening who's starting to feel a little bit like, yikes, I feel like I'm doing all those things. I was right there with you. So was I. I was doing all those things, I was hurting myself and I didn't even know the ways that I was hurting myself. I kept trying to get better and going to these weekly psychotherapy and all this, trying. And really, like, the ultimate thing I believe is that commitment that says, yes, I am staying on this planet. And yes, I am in the process of loving myself. And yes, I'm willing to receive help. And when I started saying those things, Myrna, like, my life started changing. Like you said, when I looked in the mirror at myself and I looked in my eyes and I looked at the woman that was looking back at me and I felt compassion in my heart and I cried. Like, that was so healing. And so I made myself do that every day. I was like, I'm going to look at myself in the mirror and I'm going to connect with myself for 10 minutes, however long I can do it, and just go see this woman I am right now. And if that cracks my heart open and I cry, I feel like that's healing.
Yes, it is. Yeah, I'm bad though. I did it for 2 days and stopped. Didn't even remember it again.
It happens. I have my students are listening. They're like,
I do meditate every day though, but I totally forgot to look myself in the eye thing. That's one of my first things I give people is stand in the mirror, look at yourself, hand over heart, hand over belly, and just like breathe. And just whatever comes up is what you need to face. I mean, you got to face yourself, right? Like, that's who you're facing. And she's not the enemy. She's like, she's just trying to do the best she can with the tools she has right now. And so I can love anybody who's trying to do that. And so if that's me, I can love me who's trying to do that too. Right. That's good. So when you look into the eyes, you're not looking at your soul. You're just looking at the physical person that's in front of you, that you want to love that person.
Yes. Yeah, that's where it starts. Yeah, it looks, looking at the person you are and like checking in with yourself. And, it's amazing how have you ever noticed how people won't look each other in the eyes very long?
Right.
Like that.
Yes. It's very difficult. Even I have problems sometimes.
It's hard, right? It's vulnerable. It's intimate.
It is, right. Yes.
Because they can see you. They can see your soul right through your eyes. Especially the better they get at looking for it.
Right.
I mean, so I love everything you're sharing. It's like you've done so much of your own growth. It's really evident, like from the books that you've read and the references you brought up and all of that. And I really do believe that, it does start in the mind. How do you coach people who have those negative thoughts? Because like those are real, like they happen. And I feel like a lot of people advise like, oh, we'll just kind of mantra over that or just like push that aside. And I don't know. For me, I feel like I have to, like you said, like worst case possible scenario, I've got to listen to it and really embrace that thought before it'll go away. What's your experience with that?
Well, it's very difficult to change someone's mindset because a lot of times people don't really change until they get a wake-up call. And a wake-up call is, they're sick or something, they're usually at the bottom before they would make the move. But I have developed a positive mindset, and I was going back to reference how I became a positive person, but I'm a positive person. And when I try to coach someone that always sees the negative, because that's who they are, that's their belief system, the only thing you can do is chip away at it. And one of the ways that I do it personally for myself is to do a gratitude meditation. Whenever I'm trying to, and I don't go there very often because I'm naturally a very positive person. But if something has got me down for a minute or so, or something happens or whatever, and I get into that space, then I do a gratitude meditation. And there's so many things you can be grateful for. Louise Hayes has got a powerful gratitude meditation. I mean, she talks about, being thankful that you have a bedroom with a door, being thankful that you've got a light in your house, and you've got, she called it the modern miracle of a toilet that flushes. And I can go even deeper in it. You can actually get up out of bed when you wake up and walk to the bathroom, and somebody doesn't have to clean your butt. And yet people become, negative because maybe their boss doesn't like them, or, a man left them or something like that. And it changes their whole concept. So one of the ways to combat that, and it takes time, it takes work, just like Byron Katie said, it doesn't happen overnight, is that you look for your victories in life. I record my book of wars. Anytime that I have any kind of victories, I record it because we forget, right? And when you can go back to your book of wars or your book of victories and see where you have won something or overcome something, then it's easier not to go to the doom and gloom. I'm a Christian, so it helps me that when I believe that everything works out for my good, because the Bible says that, and you look at it and you say, well, you know what? There's a blessing in here somewhere. In my country, the old people had the saying that there's a silver lining in every cloud. You know what I mean? So you look at these negative incidents that's happened to you and you look for the positive in it, right? And you find something to be grateful for. But yeah, it takes some time, which is why mindset and transformation, which is the name of my show, is so powerful, because your mindset is from your belief system, and your belief system was hammered into you as a child by the time you're 7 years old. And if you're dealing with someone in their 40s or their 30s or whatever, it's been there for a while and it's not going to go. You talked about Dr. Joe Dispenza. That's what he's talking about, rewriting those programs, because, the programs that are written are there until you rewrite them. And, it takes some work to rewrite them. Yep.
It sure does. It takes a lot of self-awareness and it is uncomfortable, right? But then you can make successes, like you said, and then you can keep track records of those successes. And that also feels great. It's like, wow, look what I accomplished. And, and there's that uncomfortable place where you're conscious of your unconscious stuff. And it's like, you haven't yet figured out how to shift it. And that part is uncomfortable. And as you keep practicing and you stay dedicated to it, in my experience, like you shift, like things change, they get better. And now you're in a new level and it's like, oh, this is like my new normal. It's like learning how to drive a car, right? When you first start driving a car, you have to keep reminding yourself about all the little pieces of driving a car, and it's very complicated and it's frustrating and you feel like really incompetent with it. And then as you do it and you practice it, it gets to be like old hat. Like you don't even think about it anymore. You drove all the way home. You weren't even there.
You got there. Right?
Yeah, it's like
You're
the same
autopilot,
way.
right?
Yeah, so it's like autopilot positivity, right? Like there's still some things that snag me as well. Like I'll still get snagged up because I'm always up leveling myself to the next place. And every time I up level, then it seems like the deeper levels inside of me get triggered up. Like whatever was deeper or more challenging is like the new level of that challenge. And so I'm always pushing myself to those edges because I like to transform and ascend, right? So that's the whole gig, I feel, for me on the soul as a planet. So I like finding those things. But when you find a snag now, I don't let it drag me all the way back to the bottom of the hill. I just go, okay, there's a snag.
Yeah.
There's a little something snagged me.
And you are going to get those snags because life is full of challenges. Life is full of enemies and people that don't like you and want to bring you down. And you've got to, sometimes it's not just you. Sometimes it's the world, and
Yeah, you gotta learn how find your pathway to get out of the snares, right? So back to your book, Out of the Snares.
I like that.
Good segue.
Use of the topic, right? Yes, good use of the topic.
So we've been talking about get yourself out of those snares and get yourself on a path that you actually want to be on. And so I know that people can tune into your Transform Your Mind podcast and see that it airs every Wednesday. And then also you have a Sunday show as well on Preach the Word Worldwide Television Network. So they can find all of that at your website, blog.myhelps.us. Anything else you want to share on the way out before we close the show?
No, just that if I were going to leave the last word for the listeners is that you are in control. You can actually design your life. And the power of intention is very, very important because anything that you intend usually happens. And a lot of times people create negatively because they don't know that they're creating negatively by thinking about stuff they don't want. And when they think about stuff they don't want, that's exactly what shows up. So be careful of your thoughts. Know that we're always creating and that you can actually live and design the life that you want. Just have the intention to do it.
Beautiful. I love that moment of encouragement there. And I just encourage everybody, please check out Myrna, check out her podcast. I'll put the link in the show notes below to my interview on Myrna's podcast as well. And take a minute to give us a like, a subscribe, a rating for this podcast so that it gets out to more people. Please share it with anybody that you think would benefit. And don't have any expectations about them benefiting from it. That's another thing I want to put there. Just give it open-handed, and if they take it, they take it, right?
They take it. And I also want to thank you, Carrie, for inviting me on the show. You do good work as far as being the light and a person that understands the souls and an advocate for Mother Earth, Gaia, things like that. I try to do that. I try to commune with the trees and, I'm respectful of Mother Earth and what she does for life on this planet. So thank you again for having me on the show and for the work that you do.
Thank you very much, Myrna. And for everybody else, we're about to give them kisses. You want to join me, Myrna, in giving them kisses? Here come your kisses, everybody.
I like that.
We'll see you all next week on Soul Nectar Show. Bye for now.
Bye.
If you found even one gold nugget in this episode of Soul Nectar Show, will you do us a favor? Will you subscribe, like, and share this episode? Maybe even write a comment and let us know what you thought about it. We really, really want to engage with you at a much deeper level. Let's be part of community together. Have a great week, everyone. Bye for now. To dive in deeper to nourishing conversation, visit soulnectar.show.
Soul Nectar Show. Awaken, Nectar Show. Take a sip from the drip of nectar from the source of who you are.